whose name is actually more than that. I call her that all the time if you don't know her. It's Shelby Renee Glaspie.
Logan.
Yeah,
my mom named me after everybody.
After everybody. So come have a seat. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited. And as I mentioned last night, can you see everybody? I'm sure you guys can all see. Can you all see? Because you can come here if you can't see. I invited Shelby because she inspires me and she has a story of following her dream, which is really what is, if you've ever listened to the podcast I run, it's really the question I want to know about everybody. Like, how do you find that thing that makes you excited? And there's different stages in our life, right? Like one time we want one thing, and then we complete that, and we move on to the next thing. But I'm going to ask her just a couple of questions and then hand the mic, because I think it's easier than me asking a bunch of questions. So I would love if you would start by where we are presently, how old you were when you started the book club, and what was involved in that stage.
Okay, so I was 27 when I started the book club. I started the book club, it was a year ago in May. I started it because I was tired of running in my mom's room, being super excited about books. And her kind of just appeasing me, like she was excited because I was excited, but I was like, I need book friends. And I don't necessarily know where I'm going to find said book friends, but I need book friends because I decided that I was going to do the things that made me the most happy when I was a kid. And that started with reading. I used to avidly read. Like the summer times, I would not sleep. My mother would be like, what are you reading now? And I'd be like, I don't know, something I found on your bookshelf, Mom. But it's about this guy, and he's in the basement, and he did this, and he did that, and are there more? Like, who's this author? I need more. So the beginning of 2020, I was like, I'm going to do what I love. And it led to me starting a book club. And it became really popular because apparently a lot of people like to read. And they've been hiding from me all this time, and I was like, where have you guys been all of my life? And now, you've been reading. You're absolutely right. We've all been reading and avoiding each other because we're reading. But it was very much a whim. Like it was an idea I had in my head, and I was like, I don't know if these people are going to talk to me. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to just make this Instagram page really quickly. And then like, if no one follows it, then they don't follow it. And it's okay. But then 5,000 people followed it. And here we are.
All right, well, that is the coolest. The moment when you hit publish on that Instagram page, was that scary? Or were you like, yeah, I'm just gonna see how it goes?
Oh, that was terrifying. I think if it wasn't scary, that would be an issue. But I didn't know what I was doing. How do you run a book club? I've never really been a part of a book club. It's always been something that I wanted to do for years, and nobody really appeased me. Nobody said like, oh yeah, you can do that, or oh yeah, we'll read books with you. So I remember going into my mom's room because that's where I go for all of my counseling. It's right across from my bedroom. I just walked right over and I was like, Mom, I'm gonna create a book club page. And she was like, okay. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah, girl, go ahead. And I thought I was gonna throw up.
Bravo. And the only reason I want to hit that is because I think that's one of those stages, and the more you hear about that, everyone's going to have a different book club in their life, but the more you hear that's the normal stage, you just go, oh, okay, this is how it goes.
Right.
So, congratulations on that. And I know you sort of were opening up to it, and now it sounds like you went in without a whole lot of direct experience, like you've been in a lot of book clubs, and you're like, I don't want to do it the way they did it, I don't want to, like you just sort of, it's like, I want to share my joy and passion and talk about the books that matter to me, and you went in like that. Since the time you launched like a year and a half ago, how has it changed from when you first put it out there, like this is how it's going to be, to like, oh, I'm going to let that go, I'm going to add this in, I'm going to expand this, like in terms of how you interact, how you share books, how you time the book, like what's been, how have you, I guess what I'm trying to say is how have you dialed in the functionality of your book club so that people are really engaged and it's working the way you like it?
I'm going to be honest and say I don't know. So when I first started, something that was important to me was I didn't want it to feel like homework for people. I feel like there are a lot of, like, there was this one book club that I saw that's an awesome book club, but they have like syllabi. And they have like a easy reading track and then like a hard reading track.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I feel like I'm taking a college course. And like, I just want to read the books. All of them, eventually, but like, I just want to read the books. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I definitely want this to be online. I definitely want it to be easy. And I definitely want it to be something where like, if you read the book, come to the IG Live and like hang out with us. If you didn't read it, still come, hey, hang out with us. Maybe you'll read it eventually, but I didn't want people to feel like they had to read it while I was reading it, or like it was a course, you know? I just want to talk about the books with somebody, and if that's one person, it's one person, that's fine. If I'm on IG Live talking to myself about it, it's fine. Y'all will watch it eventually, you know? So I think what has progressed over time is I've found ways to make it easier for people, and what I'm learning about my audience is they just need the book recommendation, right? Because everybody is busy, everybody has different state of mental health, where sometimes they can read, sometimes they can't read, and they just need to know that I'm there when they want to read. They're like, oh, Shelby is going to have the books. I know that she is, so that's the important part for me. So I just find easier ways for them to find books, easier recommendations for them, and kind of go based off of, I've made a lot of friends and I know the type of books that they like, but I also promote diversifying your reading, because you can't be well read if you read just one author or one type of author or one type of book. You gotta read them all, even the ones that are weird, and you're reading it and you're like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know what they're talking to me about. I don't know these characters. It's like 800 of them, and we're only on page 2, and I don't know what's happening, but you have to push through, because how are you well read if you don't try anyway? So like, I learned my people, and I'm like, okay, you don't like to read self-help books, but you're gonna read that this month. And you don't like mystery, but we're gonna read it anyway, because you're gonna like it, I know you are. So I just try to learn them and make it as easy as possible for them to find the book recommendations and find what they're looking for.
That is awesome. That is so awesome. And it kind of leads into the next question. I was wondering how, since you started the book club, how it's affected your own reading for pleasure, your own choices in what you're reading, how you read. If you think, wow, this is for book club, so I have to read it with a different mindset, or I'm reading this book and I've put it on the list, but now I'm 3/4 of the way into it and I want to throw it across the room. Like, how has it affected your reading?
So I have to schedule out my reading, because what happens to me when I read something, one or two things happen. I fly through a book because I love it, but then almost immediately I forget because it's not new anymore. So if that's the book club pick, in my mind I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this at the last minute possible so that I can remember everything, because there have been plenty of times where I've been on IG Live and I'll be like, y'all, what is that character's name? Who was that related to? Remember the thing? Okay, cool. That was important. So I've definitely learned to schedule out my reading, and I always make sure that there's something that I really want to read every month. Like something that I really, really want to read. Even if it's, you know, a lot of the times in my mind, because there's the amount of books that I want to read every year. This year is 50 books. I'm 4 books behind y'all, and I am stressed about it. Stressed. But, so in my mind, I'm always like, okay, I got to read 7 books this month. I have the Patreon book club. I have the book club on Instagram. And then I'm like, okay, 3 of these books need to be things that I've been waiting for. Like 3 books that I know for a fact I'm going to enjoy and that I'm going to love. And then the stuff for the book club, I always read it at the very last minute because I read fast. Or I listen to it on full speed and I'm like in the house like, Mommy, don't talk to me. I have to listen to this book by like 8 o'clock tonight. And she's like, girl, you had a month. Listen. listen. I'm going to figure it out. I know what this book is about by 8 o'clock. So I schedule everything out and I make sure like a favorite author, a favorite type of book is in there so that I'm fulfilled.
Yeah. That's super smart. Super smart. So a moment came recently, in recent months, where you up-leveled. You were like, wow, that was an idea and a dream, and pop, that went, but that's not the big dream. And so I want you to share with everyone, you went for the big dream.
Yes.
And what it was, and where we are with it.
Okay. So I've always wanted a bookstore. tangible for me. There are some things that are just a dream because everybody around me counts me out. They see me and they count me out, right? So a lot of things happen. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the long story. Pandemic happened. My best friend died. And then a whole bunch of family members died from COVID. And I was in this space in my life where everything was crumbling. And then my job was like, well, eventually you're going to have to go back to a branch in the middle of a pandemic. And I was like, y'all have lost it. And I have also lost my mind because my life is crumbling around me. So I vowed to myself, I'm going to do the things that I love. I have to take care of Shelby. I don't know what that looks like. I don't even really know what it means to take care of myself because at 27, I still live at home. My mama is taking care of me. I don't have much to think about besides going to work and paying my little bit of bills. So I was like, oh, I guess I have to figure out who I am. What is Shelby like? How does Shelby grieve? How does Shelby love herself? What does all of that look like to me? So now I'm figuring things out. And I was like, hey guys, I hate my job. That's new. I never realized that I hated my job because I thought I was supposed to be doing this. I'm being what they told me that I had to be, which is this corporate America girl, and I'm fitting into these boxes that they were shoving me into. And I was really good at fitting in those boxes because I master everything that I do. I am Gay's child. My mother has taught me to show up and show out, and I do that everywhere that I go, but I'm not happy, right? So book club comes along. I create my book club, and I'm really, really happy because people are talking to me about books, and all of a sudden, the love that like I knew was there was tangible. I could feel it. People were excited about me in a way that I couldn't comprehend because I wasn't really excited about me to begin with. So then I have to make all of these big life decisions. Are you going to go back to a branch? What are you going to do about money? How do you still talk about people about books? How do you take care of yourself? How do you love yourself in a way that means something, right? Because now people are watching me. People are inspired by me because I'm doing these things that in my mind, y'all can start a book club too. What's the big deal? Y'all can do this. It's not that big of a deal. My mom is on Instagram all day, every day. If she can do it, we all can do it. It's not that big of a deal, right? But it is because I'm taking this really big step. So then I say, I'm not going back to work because it doesn't fit in with me loving myself. You want to know what does? Opening a bookstore. I don't even know if the people are going to buy books from me. I don't even know what running a bookstore looks like. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to do it. And here we are. I'm authentically myself every day, and I take care of me first, doing the thing that I love, and it has opened up so many opportunities for me that would not have been possible if I was continuing to be someone that I wasn't. Now, what I will say to you, whatever your beliefs are, whatever you believe in, manifestation, God, Allah, whatever it is, right? We all pray somehow, whether it is setting your intentions, whether it is on your knees at night before you go to bed. Be open to the things that you ask for in your prayers. Everything that I've asked for, I've gotten, down to the T. I said that I was going to be a bookstore owner when I was like 7 years old. Here I am, a bookstore owner. You have to be open. It's not, your path is never going to look like whatever is in your mind, whatever you come up for yourself. It's not going to be what you imagine, but you're going to get it. But you have to be open to it, and you have to just fall into whatever it is. And there are many times, the person that I speak to the most is my grandmother. She's been gone almost 10 years. And there are plenty of days I sit out loud and I say, Grandma, I don't get it. I need help. Grandma, I want this bookstore to work. And then it does, because I'm open. It's all going to work out for your highest good. You just got to know that. That's the only thing. The only thing you have to remember is it's going to work out for your highest good, even if it doesn't look the way that you planned for it to look. It's going to happen. So I have a bookstore now because I started taking care of myself mentally, kind of physically. I mean, I walk my dog twice a day. kind of physically, but I have my bookstore because I started taking care of myself. And I think that's where it starts. I think a lot of people see me and they say, oh, she's doing this big thing. She opened a bookstore, but the big part is I started taking care of myself.
That's good. Oh, wow. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do now that we have a bookstore owner and an author, I'm going to step out, not before I give away some more prizes, and then Shelby is going to interview Rachel Alpine, who is a published author from a variety of different genres too, which I think is really interesting because it speaks to your book club.
Yes.
And I think it would be really fun and interesting to hear that journey because it's a lot to think about. I'm going to write a book one day, then to write it, to get it published, to create a whole series. And I actually have here one of them in her Invincible Girls Club, which I'm trusting she's going to talk all about. Amazing. Love, love, love. And they're going to talk all about it. So I'm going to get out of the picture, but not before I give away. How many do we need to do? Oh, question.
Yeah. Will you share your Instagram handle, bookstore,
Yes.
book, all that stuff, please?
Yes. So at the end of this, I will hand out business cards, but just for the meantime, it is Shelby and the Bookstore on Instagram. So Shelby is spelled SHELBEY. ShelbyandtheBookstore.com. Shelby the Bookstore on Instagram. You can find all my information there. But like I said, when we finish this book, I have business cards and you can scan the QR code on the back and find all of my links.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Sorry.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
that's great. More questions?
Can we ask questions now or is it at the end?
I think she could handle a few questions.
Yeah,
Let me check real quick. Are you okay? Do you have it? We don't know. She can handle just a few. We pulled it.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
don't even know who it is yet.
So you speak a lot about manifestation, prayer, or being open to universe, but I'm sure you still had those moments, like you said, where you just don't understand, where you're speaking to your grandmother and you don't understand. Where do you go to? What tools? Who's your people?
Oh, I cry. I kick and scream. I give myself the grace to feel my feelings. I think a lot of the time we are kind of taught to just be these big, bad, I'm woman, hear me roar. I don't have feelings. I get all of this stuff done. No, actually, I have feelings. I'm very emotional. I feel everything. I give myself the grace to feel, but those feelings don't stop me. Right? I'm angry, but it's fine. I got work to do. I'm angry and I'm working. I'm sad and confused. And I give myself a day if that's what I need. Sometimes I give myself an hour. Like, okay, we going to sleep because I can't right now. But then I get up and I keep pushing through it because if I stop, that's detrimental to me. It's not going to make me stop, but I give myself the grace to feel. That's the important part.
Thank you so much. So we have a winner, but just to be totally authentic, it was Andrew Mao who chose this, so I want to make sure she was it. And the winner is Trisha. We have 10 gorgeous skeins of silk and wool. It's gorgeous. Yes, yes. And we're going to do, how many more? Gosh, we have a lot of these. Okay. Could you choose one for me, please? What do we got? You win? You win! Yay! You win! Beautiful. So I have 2 left and the earrings. I'm going to save those. Right now, I'm going to invite Rachel Alpine to please come up and join us. And I'm going to hand the interview over to the book owner to my right, Shelby May Lassie Logan.
How are you, Rachel? You're good. So, Rachel is an author, like Elizabeth explained before, and she recently sent me some of her books, the Invincible Girls Club. And like I spoke to you guys before, I was an avid reader when I was a kid, but I rarely read children's books because my mama didn't care what I was reading as long as I was reading. But what her books put me in the mind of were Judy Blume books.
Yes.
Remember
Yes.
the thrill of a Judy Blume book. And like I would go, my mom would take me to Barnes and Noble. I was like, I want every last one of them. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about what was your inspiration for your books. And there's an emphasis in your books on girl power. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So I do. I very much like to write about girl power. I'm a teacher too, and I think like I want to write books that like empower my students because I see them every day and I see what they're going through and things like that. But going back to Judy Blume, I mean, she was my jam. Like I loved her and read all of her stuff, and part of it, like when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of young adult literature, and that's kind of how I got started. Is like I would read her stuff, and I would read it over and over and over again. And then I also read a lot of Babysitters Club, which is where the Miserable Girls Club vibe kind of comes from, and I can talk about that too. But my inspiration has always been, I think to the heart of it, is to write the books that when I was growing up, I wanted to read. The stories I wanted to read. And I know Elizabeth, I didn't see you with your sweater, like you but like you said, all the different types of books that I write, I think part of it is that these different genres are things that I wanted to read, so I am kind of all over the place with my writing.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. I think it's cool when you hear about people writing, you're kind of catering to your inner child because there was this space that you want to feel, not only for yourself, but for your students as well. So when did you decide that like being an author was what you were going to do? Because I told my story, we talked a bit about like taking a leap of faith. I'm pretty sure that was also a leap of faith for you. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I will give a shout out to my mom. She's over here too. And she was the one that started my love of reading like pretty much since the day I was born. And I just always say as soon as I got to school and learned how to write, it just blew my mind that I'm like, hey, I love reading stories and I can create my own stories. So that's kind of like where it started from there. And my mom like saved a whole bunch of my stuff from school growing up, and I had this little booklet. I always make a joke out of it. It was like when I grow up, and I was around maybe like 7, and it said, I want to be a famous author. And then there's a picture of me, and I had this awful like short haircut with these bangs and this dress, like bad dress. But then there's a sign that says, Rachel Alpine, world famous author, and confetti falling down. So I mean, ever since I have notebooks full of stories from 3rd grade on. But I will kind of along this idea of like kind of not believing in yourself and things. So I like wrote all through grade school. I wrote into high school, and then I went to college, and I went to my first writing class, and I was so excited, and I remember the professor's name. Every time I'm like, oh. So I go to the class, I write a story, and then I come back to get the paper, and he gives it back, and the only thing it said was, this is not writing, across the front of it. And so I like sat in class, and I tried not to cry, and I walked out, and I threw the paper away, and this is like in the olden days, so I walked to the bursar's office and dropped a class, and then I didn't write for probably like 8 or 9 years again, like didn't pick anything up, didn't write, and so it kind of shut me down, and yeah, I don't know, and then I started teaching, and I just saw my students, and I didn't want to be this person that like shut down from one thing, and so that's when I started following my dream, and so I set this goal. I was like, I'm gonna write my first book by the time I was 30, and I did, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. So yeah.
That's awesome. I nicer. I don't know that I have had many. They can be very difficult to deal with. But I'm glad that you learned to take care of yourself. Like I was speaking about earlier, you learned to take care of yourself and your inner child and get to your dreams somehow. So can you tell me about what it's like to submit a draft of your book? Because I'm pretty sure you had to find an agent or you had to do all of that research. So what was that process like for you?
I said it's so much I think about publishing. Like I publish traditional, so I publish with Simon Schuster. And I feel like so much of it is about luck. I really, really do. Like that you have the right manuscript, the agent's looking for it, then the publisher's looking for it. Like I remember one of my books I had, and it goes to something called acquisitions, where like everybody sits around the table and decides if they want it. And I had a book went to Disney to acquisitions, and they were like, "Well, we just bought a book about XYZ a month ago, so we can't buy another one. But if you would have sent it sooner, it would have happened."
Right.
And that's like a lot of what, it's kind of crazy. That's a lot of what I really do feel like publishing is. Like, I feel like I'm very lucky about things, but going after an agent is awful. Really, really awful. I queried about 70 agents. I think it was 73. And all you do is you send an email and it's 3 paragraphs. And it's very to the point. The first paragraph is your book, the genre, the amount of words, and a little bit about you. Second one's about your book. And then the third one's basically like, thanks for listening. And there's literally like a slush pile that you get pulled out of. And when I first started doing, some agents were still using like snail mail, which is crazy. I'm not that old. And what would happen is you'd put a self-addressed envelope or stamp on it, and if they, just to know if they wanted, if they wanted to see more, they usually would ask for 10 pages in the manuscript. So it's like a whole process there too. But what I always remember, and I still have them, is that they'd send back the rejections, and most of the time they were printed on the back of somebody else's query letter. Like they were like recycling, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like somebody else's. It was a long process. It took a while for me. I'm actually with my 3rd agent now. My first agent, so my publishing journey is kind of different. So my first agent, we tried to sell my book, we couldn't. And she left agenting. And so I sent the book out to smaller presses and sold it to a mid-level press. And then I was like, well, I can't do this myself. So then I queried really fast, signed with an agent from one of the biggest publishing houses there is. And that happened. And then I wrote my 2nd book. And I had a lot of people that don't believe in me. And I just remember he was like, it was a middle grade book. It was called Operation Pucker Up. And he said nobody is going to buy a book for middle schoolers, like for 4th, 5th, 6th grade, a book about kissing. Because they don't sell, he goes, unless you're Judy Blume. He goes, nobody's going to buy a book about kissing for kids this age unless you're Judy Blume. And so I told my husband, I was like, I can't have him represent me. Like, he doesn't believe in me. So long story short, like, my husband's like, you're nuts. You don't walk away from an agent. I did. I have a fabulous agent right now. Now we're 10 books in. Her first book she sold was Operation Pucker Up to Simon Schuster. So that's like a long, and it's a book about kissing. So there's kissing in it for younger kids, but it's not. It's a book about kissing. I always say where kissing doesn't happen. But it was a very long process, and I think I just needed, I needed to find my fit. And I needed to trust myself, and I needed to trust my gut. It wasn't working. And it's the same with you, like walking away from a job, walking away from these things that are secure, and I'm just like, I don't care if I have an agent and he's, from this.
secure,
Yes.
but it's not actually secure
Yeah.
because it's not getting us where we want to be.
Yeah.
So you got to make the hard decision to get, what you actually want.
So it all worked out in the end.
That's a really, it's an inspiring journey because not everybody has the ability to persevere because people see your finished product, or my mom says, like, people see your chapter 30 and compare it to their chapter 1. So people will look at you and say, oh, she has 10 books out, it must have been easy. But no, we're all going through the same things. We are all going through the same things. So I'm going to ask you like a silly question now.
Sure.
Which one is your favorite?
Oh,
Which one's your favorite?
So I always say you can't do that. That's like, I always do a lot of talks with kids, and I'm always like, how many of you have siblings? And I'm like, okay, do you ask your parents? Do they tell you who their favorite child is? So it's just so hard. I don't know. I say, the one I'm working on, the one that I spend the most time with. I've had a lot of success with a book called You Throw Like a Girl. It's like, maybe it's one of my favorites, but I think it is. I mean, I'd say 200 to 300 like Zooms and author talks and stuff with kids, and it's just like, it's the coolest thing ever to be able to like see this group of faces of readers, like you said that. It's the same with your book club.
Yeah,
These kids are so excited to talk about it. So probably You Throw It Like a Girl. And it's like chock full of girl power.
So I do know that in your books you highlight a lot of women, Elizabeth being one of them. You highlighted her in your recent book.
That was so crazy. That was so crazy.
How do you decide which women you're going to highlight? Because there are so many powerful women that are doing amazing things, so I'm pretty sure it can be hard because you probably spend all day going, yeah, I'm going to put all of it in here, and it will just be a book about great women. So how do you decide?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, just a little background. So I have a new series. I keep calling it new. A book takes 2 years to write. When it's sold to publish. So I have 2 books coming out in 2022. So for me, it feels like a new, I don't know, but it's a very long process. So I have a series out called The Invincible Girls Club, and we just sold the 5th one, which is really exciting. So it's gonna keep going. But it's about a group of, so this is the third one. I can't even keep it straight anymore. This is the 3rd one. And so it's about a group of 3rd graders who set out to change the world. And in the first book, they want to get the older dogs at the pound adopted because, they've been there forever. And they find out that, you don't have to be old to change the world. You can change it at any age. So anyway, so each of the books focuses on a story with the girls, but then at the end of the book, I have profiles of 10 invincible girls. I say like past or present, and then I also say like well-known or not as well-known. And I also like to have some kids in it if I can sometimes, and things like that. And then the book has like a couple pages of things that the readers can do to be invincible too. But so that's the background. So each of the books has 10. And really the way that, so I do it, I love, again, I like my readers. It's the best part of being an author. So I'll put something out on Facebook a lot of the time. That's where a lot of like the moms and the kids will come and stuff. And I'll say, okay, so this one I was like, this book's about crafting and nature and about like slowing life down. Was like what I asked for, and I was like, who knows, like women, past or present, invincible girls, who would be great for this? So I really like to ask and solicit. I definitely like to give props to people that inspire me too. My students are a huge part of my writing process. Like they see it all. So when you talk about like what your mom said about only seeing, like the final step, like I show them like this book. Here's 27 drafts of this book that I did. So I asked them. So for my next book, I can tell you all, we're looking for legacy basically is a legacy now that has happened. So I would take recommendations from anybody here too. So that's kind of how I've done it. I always start with one or two people I really like, and then I seek it out. I look on social media. I use TED Talks a lot in my classroom. So yeah, so I'll use that. So all different ways.
That is really awesome because I probably fill every page with Beyonce and my mom. So no, that's actually really, really cool because it spreads the word. Like you said, known and unknown.
Mm-hmm.
It's building the knowledge, but the books are very fun. I was so excited when I got her books in the mail the other day. My mom was like, "You're supposed to be taking me somewhere." I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna send the card and read." So yeah, it's lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm super proud of you. Just so you guys know, some of her books will be in my bookstore. So give me until I get back. But they will be in my bookstore. You will be able to get her books. So
We're going to keep going for a second. Your timing is amazing. Your time is amazing. So before I give out the last gifts, and before they greet you with the door, and they have all kinds of wonderful things to tuck into your pockets, I just want to open it up for the next 10 minutes or so for some questions. They've shared a whole lot of information. I see Amy Sue's going up, but it's just a really good time to hear from all of you because it's a conversation. So, Amy Sue.
Hi, so both of you as a reviewer slash seller and you as a writer, what do you feel about all the KU and other similar publishing things now? Do you feel like they interfere with, better, published,
you're talking about
Kindle Unlimited
Kindle
or the
Unlimited,
self,
okay.
yeah.
You go ahead. Yeah.
Because they can be very hit or miss in terms of whether they had an editor, whether,
Right, I feel like it's like a double-edged sword. Rachel has spoke about a lot about publishing being luck, and I feel like it's one of those things where it's opening doors for people, but then I don't feel like it's established enough in some areas, so I feel like it may be leading people astray in some instances because they may not have the luck that Rachel spoke about, or so on and so forth. But I do think it's a good idea.
I just wonder, of the ones who do it successfully, how many folks kind of get used by because that's what I hear, when I'm on Instagram and you hear from some of these writers that they get.
One thing that I've noticed, and this may not be for everybody, is a lot of the people that are successful with the Kindle Unlimited and stuff like that are doing journals and blank books. It's not necessarily anything written because they're trying to make fast money.
Oh, right. So you can do
Right.
that.
So you can do
Right.
I'm making a gratitude journal, and it's a couple sentences in there about, tell them what are you grateful for today. Write down a list of, your favorite colors and all of that kind of stuff. Those things are awesome. I buy those journals all the time because I have a purchasing problem. But I don't think, that's why I say I think it's a really good idea, but I don't think that it's refined enough that it's helping the people that it's intended to help.
Thank you.
Another question?
Anyone else?
Can I say?
Yes.
Two-part, both of you can answer. Shelby, how do you go about choosing the next book club pick for the month? And then Rachel, I know you kind of talked a little bit about your sources of inspiration, but how do you hone in on, yes, that's the topic for my next one, and say Invincible Girls Club?
You want me to go first? Okay. Ever since I can remember, I've had a bazillion million stories in my head, always. So I'm the type of person that never has had a loss for books. At this point, so I always, whatever speaks to me. At this point though, because I'm writing a series, I do pitch a whole bunch of ideas to my editor, and I'll tell them, I really like this one, and I'll say, what do you think? So at this point, it's more their choice a little bit, and they're really well, you just had a book about, art, so let's do something about XYZ instead. So, but whatever speaks to me, and that because I write so I have 2 young adult books, and and then I have elementary with pictures, which is the coolest thing ever. See that, and then I have middle grade. So it is, sometimes I do feel like I'm jumping from one to another, and sometimes I have to if I'm on a deadline, and I don't know if that answers your question, but it's all over the place, which is pretty much what my writing is like.
So, book club things. In the beginning, it was kind of on a whim. But a lot of things happened. George Floyd happened. There was a lot of conversation about people not knowing where to find Black authors. And I had to kind of change things around a little bit because, okay, now I have a purpose that was kind of placed on me that I don't mind having because I never had an issue finding Black authors. So what I've been doing is I have a theme in my mind for the year. So like this year, all of the books are by Black female authors. And there have been an array, like we've read fantasy, we've read mystery, we've read thriller, we've read, my favorite is fantasy because it's hard to find fantasy by Black authors. And the ones that I've found, like, it's amazing to me because some of these authors I've never read before. So my purpose, like if I had to have like a mission statement, I want my readers to diversify their reading and to be open to more, or introduced to more Black authors. So that's where I go into it. And like next year, my plan is for it to be all Black male authors. Because there's a lack, right? Because even me, like looking up things, I'm like, there has to be a man that writes fantasy. There has to be. Where is he? Why can't I find him? So that's kind of how I go. And then I'm a list type of person, so like I write lists all the time, and a list for everything. So I just kind of just put a pool together of like, oh, here are some authors that I've researched, found, and this sounds interesting. I don't know if I necessarily like that. I don't know if that's going to go over well with the group, and that's how I do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a question.
It's just, so I've always been thinking myself as a feminist, girl power, yeah. And now my youngest is come out as non-binary. So now anything that says women's group, you know, girl power, anything that has that label on it, then you think like, how do you make your stories gender inclusive? Or do you talk about that with your publisher?
I do. It's for me. It's not a question. It's just something that I include, and again, I think it goes back to me being a teacher and the reflection I want to have on my students. So I mean, I definitely am. Like I said, publishing's 2 years behind. So it's getting more and more inclusive. And I'm getting more and more, aware of the stories, that I'm able to tell and not able to tell, but the characters I should include. But my editor is amazing, like amazing. And she'll stand up for me, she'll stand up for things, and you do it with the age, but I have 2 young boys right now, and I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. It's just there. Like, does that make sense? It's just there. It's not something that is really even acknowledged, if that makes sense. Like, these are the families in the books. These are, so for me, it's just a normalizing of everything. But my publisher is awesome with it. And, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
To know that, like, the publishing is 2 years behind, because that's
Yeah.
not even something that I know, but now as a bookseller, it makes a lot of sense, because what I've noticed is there are a lot of, like, the same kind of books, I'll say, just like in layman terms, that come out at the same time or in the same year. So, for example, there's a book called The Prophets it's a book about slavery, but the main characters are part of the LGBT community. There are a lot of other books that have come out, very similar storylines to that this year. You'll also notice book covers that
Yeah.
Even a lot of, as a bookseller, me adding things to my website, I feel like I'm going crazy because I'm like, didn't I add this book? Like, did I just see this already? So it makes a lot of sense. It's probably down the pipeline, and then like in 2 years, there will probably be like a really big boom of, okay, now we have a bunch of non-binary things. And we just have a lot of conversations about like, you're gonna see things that look a certain way because they've always been that way. It's okay that you don't fit there. You know, like this says girl power, but it means they, them power as well. It means him power as well. It applies to you as well. Like we kind of have those conversations.
The answer is I feel like it's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
There is no like.
But like I said, what I
male power.
Yeah. But I would say, like, I always also think that when people ask me, you know, and this kind of goes away from it, but why do you write these books about girls and stuff? And I'm like, I am, but I'm actually writing them like for my sons, you know, like for boys too. I will tell you that in publishing, and I now in my and in my classroom, publishing's doing such a good job of making sure the people telling the story are the people that should tell the story. And that's a conversation, and we'll see that even more and more and more too, which is awesome. And that's a conversation I have a lot with my students. We pick up stuff and we say, you know, who's writing this? Is this their story? Should they be the one? I show them the books I pulled out of my classroom and things like that. So I really do think that, publishing's gonna catch up. You're gonna see more and more, I think, soon. It's just that.
I definitely think that it's probably down the pipeline because, like I said, like that 2 years, it totally makes sense. Like a light bulb went off in my head because you see a lot of the same things, and even you can probably say that about like things outside of books too. Like, you know, all of these music videos look the same because they're all doing the same thing because however many years ago or months ago, this was the popular thing or this was, you know, their purpose or whatever they were trying to marketing wise. So it's probably coming.
And in terms of like, if the Invincible Girls Club continues, I have already had conversations with my editor about it's not just a club for girls, and that would be, you know, one of the stories that will hopefully then shift some of that too. So yeah.
Somebody was behind me. So I have a question for both of you. In a world where obviously we can be glued to our phones and social media and so many things, especially between millennials and Gen Z, you know, TikTok nation, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to someone to be consistent in being an avid book reader? Because, you know, sometimes when people hear 40, 50 books, it's like, wow, unreachable. And what would be your one piece of advice if someone wanted to write? To be consistent in writing where they can get to a point of publishing 10 books?
I think that the issue with consistent reading is that people get caught up in a book that they don't like. And they don't know how to kind of just be like, I don't like this. So my word of advice for that is, or how I appease myself when I purchase too many books and don't know that I'm going to read them all. I always say I'm buying this book for my future self. Shelby today is not going to read this. This is not for Shelby today. This sounds interesting for Shelby maybe next month or in 5 years. So when I'm reading something and I'm just like, I don't really like this, I give myself a page limit. If I can't get past page 50, I'm probably not going to read this book. I need to move on to the next thing. I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. Outside of that, there's this saying that like if they wanted to, they would. If you wanted to read, you would, right? But TikTok is sometimes a lot more entertaining and that's fine. But make the space to read because you know that you want to. You know that you really enjoy it. You know that it's better for your mental health. Like Shelby's a better person when she's reading like 2 books a week. When it's down to 1, I don't know who y'all gonna get, but I don't know about that version of me. But you know, it's really about making the time. And when I don't make the time, I suffer mentally, my life don't feel right, the stars not aligned, nothing is going the way that I wanted to because I haven't sat down and done the thing that I need to do for me. So make the time, and then if you don't like the book, it is fine. Give it to somebody else, take it to, sell it to a library, something. It's okay if you don't like it, or keep it and then read it eventually. Don't beat yourself up on it and force yourself to read something that you know you're not enjoying.
That was kind of the conversation we had before this. Yeah, so that's how I approach it. I know I'm here as a writer, I'm talking so much about teaching, but I tell my students, I'm like, most people their entire life were given books and told what to read. And I'm like, I tell this story about how I had to teach honors English one year, and it was last minute, and I had to read Robinson Crusoe. I'm like, I hated it. I was like, I get it. If you don't like a book, you don't want to read it. I was like, this was torture. And that's what we do. And I fought with my school, but every day we start the class with 20 minutes of reading time, and it's a book that they want to read. And we start, and like in the beginning, the first week, I'm like, do you like your book? No? Let's get you another. And I think it's you have to like what you're reading. And it's like what you said, if you enjoy it, you want to do it, right?
You want to do it, you fly through it. But there have been plenty of times where someone has said to me, oh, Shelby, you have to read this. And I'm like, 20 pages in, like, this is terrible and bad. This is not.
But at least you gave it a try, right? And I think that's the important thing.
A real team effort, but sometimes it's just not it. Yeah, it's just not it. So,
Yeah, and then for me with writing, I think it's kind of like what you said. With reading is, I have to do it. It's not, and if I don't, I'm grumpy, and I'm like, I need to do it. And this is what I say, I have a 3-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, and I teach English where, the kids are writing these research papers. I'm not there right now, it's just I escaped for a few days, but it does not feel like a job. And so I'm 11 books in, and it's still, it's my hobby. And until I have to pick up and write, and I don't want to, then I probably will stop. And that's why a lot of times people are like, well, why don't you stop teaching? And I was like, because I don't want it to be my job. Yeah. And so again, it just goes back to, I think, if you find something, a book you love, if you're writing about something, I think that consistency just comes. It does help too to take your phone and put it somewhere else. I handwrite all my books first in notebooks, and I always knock on wood, I haven't lost one yet or spilled anything, but it's because of that distraction.
Another thing I will say is audiobooks count as reading.
Yes.
A lot of people beat themselves up. The amount of times I ask someone, how many books are you up to this year? And they're like, what do you mean, physical or what I listen to? Those books you listen to count too. You have to find how, we all have different learning curves, we all learn differently. Sometimes sitting down and reading a book, I have a friend who every time she attempts to, she just falls asleep. It's not for her, but she can listen to a book while she's doing whatever, cleaning the house, dropping the kids off, going for a run, whatever. They count too. So sometimes it's about finding, there are plenty of times where I've tried to read a book and it was boring, but I listened to it and I loved it.
Well, I think there's books where, I have a couple books where I'm like, you have to listen to this. I'm like, don't read it.
Yeah, don't read it. Listen to it.
And I think, because you're hearing your voice, and it makes a difference.
Yeah,
so,
it really makes
I
a
love
difference. I think that's really important. Find your medium, so to say. Maybe it is a physical book in some cases because you need to put it in your mind yourself. You need to see the words. You need the whole feel of the book in your hand and the smell of the new pages and all of that. But then other times you need somebody else to read to you. When we were children, it was the best part of my day when my mother read me a book. So sometimes you need that, and it counts. I'm here to tell you. And the next time you find somebody that says that it doesn't count, you send them to me.
Thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
I would have never gotten through Moby Dick if I'd had to.
Oh yes, it is boring. And it's 1,000,000 pages long. I had a post about this on my Instagram page today, where for me personally, anything over about 400 pages is ridiculous to me, because what are we talking about after 400 pages? There is nothing that you could possibly be telling me about characters, plot, or anything 400 pages. It is wrapped up. It is done.
Shelby, a lot of my books are 500 pages.